Have you just finished watching the Bastion series and you're like, you know what? That story was very good. It was very riveting. It was a very good story. Of course you didn't. Why? Because the story was completely vague and kind of open, and you kind of have to dig through the entire game. You have to get achievements to figure out characters past. You have to actually play through and actually listen while you're playing and fighting enemies to do it. Like I said, while I was doing the gameplay, it really frustrated me that you had to fight a lot of enemies and then also listen to the story to understand what was going on. And even after the edit, I didn't understand what was happening, and I even had friends watch it and they didn't understand what was happening either in the story. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper and see what was actually happening in the story. It seemed very interesting. It seemed like there was a lot going on, but it just wasn't presented in a very good way. Also, if you stick around to the end of the video, I did the alternate ending, showing the two different options that you could get at the ending. So either stick around or go down below. There are chapters in the video. You can skip all the story, and if you just want to see what the alternate ending is, you can do that. So to start off with, everything are the places mentioned within the game. First being Caelondia. This is brought up the entire time, and we, as our main character, are Caelondian. Simply put, Caelondia is just the main city where everyone lives. It's actually very straightforward. Alternatively, the Tazal Terminals, which is also mentioned a few times, is where the Euro live. That's kind of their encampment. And lastly, for the places, is the Bastion. And I don't know why, but towards the end of the game, I was getting the Bastion and the Calamity mixed up in my head, and we will get to the Calamity. That's we'll cover what that actually was. But for anyone who was watching the gameplay, the Bastion is just that area where all the towns are that we are building. It's more or less a floating island. It was designed to be an escape pod for if there's ever an emergency, all the citizens of Caelondia can get onto the Bastion and they can take off, fly away, and get away from danger. And you can actually see this in the very beginning of the game. Our character, the kid, wakes up on the walls and he runs as everything's being destroyed behind him, and he makes it to the Bastion. Additionally, I did notice in the edit of the final episode, while they're showing the graphics of the evacuation, if you choose that option, you can notice down in the bottom corner what looks to be a city. I would assume that this is supposed to be Caelondia, and I didn't even notice this during the gameplay. So I think that's just a cool representation to show like the city in the background and then you taking it off away from the city. And that pretty much does it for all the places. You can get into the little individual places that we go throughout the game, but it doesn't lend itself up to the major story. I feel like in the edit, each place, the narrator does a good job of explaining what that place is, so I don't want to go into that. And now onto the characters. I put these into a specific order. There's a reason for that. Each one will build onto themselves until we get to the very end. So starting off is our main character, the kid, which through the entire game we never learn what his name actually is, and I kind of like that, but on the other hand I kind of wish like towards the end we got more of a story behind who he was and like what his name is, or if they even made a sequel to this game, which I don't think they did, and they kind of delved into the background of our main character. That would be pretty cool. So what is the story of the kid? They gave us all this information into the first dream sequence I did, and I was so caught up in the fights that I wasn't paying attention to what he was saying. But to sum it all up, whenever he was really young, his mom was sick and school wasn't working out for him, so he dropped out of school and he went to work on the walls, or as we know it in the very beginning of the game, the crippling walls. This is pretty comparable to the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones, where people just volunteer to work there and they more or less protect the city from anyone who wants to try to get through the walls. So he volunteered on the walls, he made money, and he was sending money back home. And it wasn't until his volunteering was done that when he went home, he realized that his mom passed away and none of the money he was sending home was even around. So they never really dive into why that is. And so seeing all this, not having any of the money that he sent home, he decided to go back to the wall and work. While working on the wall, that's whenever the Calamity happens, and that's where the beginning of the game starts. We wake up to this catastrophic event happening and we make it to the Bastion, and that's pretty much all we have for the kid. So following the kid, next up we have Rucks. And Rucks is very generic of a character because he doesn't really give too much away about himself. We learn later on towards the end of the game that he built the Bastion and he helped build the rippling walls, which kind of shows that he was involved with the city. And I didn't get these achievements, but apparently there are achievements that if you get them, he will speak up and talk about his time in the army. So again, he keeps it very vague, very generic, but there's hints there that he was part of the army, probably high ranking in that too, and then that's what got him his job later on with the city. Now, there are some fan theories that dive more into Rucks and his backstory, one of them being that Rucks is the kid from the future. You can see that both of them have white hair, and Rucks mentions it's a rare trait in Caelondia during this dream sequence. Alternatively, if you look at their face, the kid has a bandage on his left cheek and Rucks has it kind of looks like a scar in the same position. Some people say that maybe it isn't a scar, it's the skin or whatnot, but you leave it up to you. I think it's very coincidental. Maybe it is kind of odd that they are in the same place. And another weird little thing between the two is that they both have a red bandana. I don't know if this was intentional from the developers, and I think maybe it was for the same reason, for people to dive in, for them to dig into the game a little bit more. But that's all for the first theory. A second theory is that Rucks is the kid's father. Again, this would explain both of them having the white hair. If Rux's past is true, where he was in the army and then he's doing these serial projects for the city, building Bastion, building the rippling walls, then it makes sense to why the kid didn't have a father growing up. The theory is too that he doesn't know that that's his son, so he just talks to him and just thinks he's just someone else, and just, oh, like, it's weird that you have white hair. I have white hair too. But the pieces never come together and he doesn't know that. I do think that the hair color was very purposeful in trying to link the two together, but I wish they would have dove more into why he does have white hair and the relationship between the two, if any. So now that we have the two Caelondia people out of the way, now we kind of need to cover the Yura. So the Yura are another race of people. As they mentioned in the game, they have black hair and pale skin, and they lived over in the Tazal Terminals. Now the Yura and the citizens of Caelondia got into a war over a piece of land. The Yura were outnumbered, they retreated and went back to the Tazal Terminals, and then it was very hostile between the two for a very long time. And any Yura that lived in Caelondia while this war went on, they were very suspicious between the people of Caelondia, which we've seen in history, in real life all the time. But the relationship between the two were actually starting to come together. They were starting to settle their differences, and then the Calamity happened. And then this just split them all apart, which is why through the entire game we're fighting the Yura, because they're mad that we destroyed everything. So now we're on to Zulf, and Zulf's backstory is huge. If you want to look into it, go ahead. I'll probably link it down below. To sum it all up, whenever he was younger, his parents died of the plague and he was an orphan. And in typical movie fashion with orphans and whatnot, he turned to stealing and whatnot just to survive from day to day. One day he got caught by a missionary, and instead of being scolded, he was adopted by the missionary. They then taught him theology and history and taught him manners along the way. Completely turned his life around, and then he became a spokesperson for the Yura, wanting to speak on peace. So he travels to Caelondia, where he wants to spread this word that the Yura aren't bad, and he wants to try to unite the two together again. So while he was in Caelondia, he met up with this girl that he liked so much that he decided to propose to her. She accepted, and then to celebrate, he went out with some friends to drink. While drinking, he was walking home, and then he passed out in a den, and whenever he woke up from blacking out the night before, he goes outside to everything being destroyed. The Calamity happened. So he does what anyone would do. He went to his soon-to-be wife's house, and whenever he goes into her house, he sees her lying in bed where she crumbles to dust right in front of his eyes. Every story is very sad, and there's just a lot of death involved with the story. So after he just witnessed all of this, and his life just turns around 180 in the span of 24 hours, he just goes back to where he proposed, and he just stands there and stares at the sky, which is where we find him, and that's why he's just standing there looking up. He is in shock and doesn't know what happened. So it kind of makes sense of the timeline that while we're running on the wall to make it to the Bastion is about the same time that Zulf is waking up and realizing all this is happening. So now we are on to Zia, another Yura member who lived in Caelondia. And again, Zia's backstory is very, very long, so this is going to be like kind of the bullet points of hers as well. So her parents were orphans. A couple brought them in Caelondia on the terms that they never go back to the Tazal Terminals. It's pretty much, you are going to take you in, but you need to stay in Caelondia, and that's about it. Then Zia is born, and whenever she's born, the mother dies because of health complications. At this point, the father determines, hey, it's best if we just keep our history a secret. I won't tell her that she's a Yura or anything like that, and it will keep her safe. Additionally, Zia's dad also worked for the city. I don't know if he worked with the Rucks or whatnot, but he also worked on secret projects for Caelondia. So Zia never really saw him all that much, which led to a rebellious nature. So Zia, while in school, she met this boy, and the boy somehow knew of her past and that she was Yura and all this stuff. The boy convinced Zia that they need to run away. They need to go back to the Tazal Terminals and get out of Caelondia. And Zia, being in love, said, yeah, sure, let's do that. That sounds like a great plan. So they pretty much hide in a garbage bin, and their plan is the bin is going to go to the gates, and then they're going to jump out, and then they're going to leave the gates and make it to the Tazal Terminals. However, while they're in the bin, they are met by Caelondia guards. And it turns out that the boy that she's running away with tipped off the officials and was saying that she was trying to run away to the Tazal Terminals to sell secrets to the Yura. Now, while all this is going on, Zia's dad is wanting to leave his line of work. He realizes that he's been away from his daughter for far too long, and he wants to leave the work and go back to just be a father, just be there for Zia. But then all this happens where now they're being accused of wanting to sell secrets to the Yura. Now both Zia and her dad were going to get arrested for treason, wanting to sell the secrets, but Zia's dad worked out a deal and said, you know what, I will come back, I won't leave my job, I'll keep working for the city, and then you just let us go. And we'll leave it at that, you can keep watching us, that's fine. Which they agree. They let him go, and Zia's dad goes back to work for the city, but before he leaves, he tells Zia, hey, go home, lock the door, don't go outside. So obviously something's about to happen, which she listens to him, she goes back home and she locks the door. The next day, she wakes up and the front door turns to ash, and she goes outside and everything is destroyed by the Calamity. So, what is the Calamity? This is something I've been confused about literally the entire game. They reference it so much, but they never really come out and say what it is. However, I think they do talk about it in Zia's flashback. And again, I was too busy focusing on the fight that I didn't really pay attention to what was happening in the dialogue. So, Caelondia was working on a secret weapon. This secret weapon was designed to be a defensive measure in case the Yura ever decided to attack again. And this is the project that Zia's dad was working on the entire time. So whenever he was forced to go back into work and work on it, they also wanted him to activate the weapon and attack the Yura. So what does he do? He activates the weapon, but instead of setting the target to be for the Yura, he designates the target to be for Caelondia. So whenever he sets the target, he activates the weapon and it goes off, destroying the city. However, it was a bigger weapon than he even anticipated, and it destroyed literally everyone and anything that wasn't underground. This doesn't really explain how the kid didn't disintegrate because he wakes up outside. Rucks somehow survived and they don't really tell about him going underground, and all the animals aren't underground. They don't really explain how all those things survived, but I dug through, I tried to find this information, I couldn't find it anywhere. Ultimately, this is where the spark ignites again with the Yura. They see this as an attack from Caelondia, not understanding what actually went down in the city for this to all happen. And ultimately, this is where Zulf's betrayal comes in too, because he reads the work of Zia's dad and sees that it was a weapon intended for the Yura. So if the weapon went off and the Yura were destroyed, in his head, he sees it as, oh, Caelondia was just out to destroy the Yura again, and I've been preaching this entire time for peace. So it was kind of a slap in the face for him. Again, he didn't know what went down that day with the weapon. And that's pretty much the entire story that we know and all the information that's been given to us throughout the game. Like I said, I dug through this a lot and went through a lot of sites and tried to find more information on what happened. There's more questions I have, and there's just not answers to them. I would love to see a prequel to this game, or maybe even a sequel where they do more flashbacks and you can understand more of the characters, and especially Rucks and the kid. I'd love to know more about them and what actually happened. But yeah, that was the story, and now we will go on over to the alternate ending, and let's see what happens if you pick the 2 other options. Alright, we are coming up to the ending. I will say, getting back to this point, I have died so many times. I now realize that me rushing through these levels, like me doing it before in the videos, I was taking my good old time and like, I thought maybe I could do this faster, but apparently no. Me doing it faster means I'm going to die several times. So we're gonna go down here where we have to make the decision to either save Zulf or just leave him. So we are going to leave him. Hi guys. So move on. That was a weird thing.
Kid saves Zulf once, but I don't think he'd make the same mistake. I wouldn't.
Okay, so already we have to. He just lays there now, which is sad. But now what happens? It feels like the game is moving so much slower, or maybe I'm just trying to rush it now.
Once the Bastion's restored, it'll all be alright.
So there should be a lot of people up here.
You ain't still thinking about that whole leaving the city thing, are you?
Oh boy. Oh no. I really do have to fight all these people. Okay. This is gonna be crazy. I mean, at least I can let them get close to me. So, one thing you're not seeing is I'm holding the trigger. And when I hold the trigger, it's saying I'm countering even though he's not showing it. So, something is glitching for sure in this game. It's just a weird day for recording today. I mean, I'm glad that the game decided to break now, not whenever I was doing the actual episodes. Oh, that was crazy. I just took down that entire cliff. I'm just annihilating this entire tribe.
Kid's probably dealt with Zulf by now. He reminds me of myself when I was his age.
Alright, so that's
I ever tell you
that
about
ending.
those days? Hey, kid.
This is weird though. Why would we still have to do this scene? Well, I guess this scene was also very odd. Whenever you save Zulf, like I got it that he was getting shot a ton of times. Whenever he came back, then he collapsed. But whenever you beat everyone, why do you still collapse? That doesn't make sense to me.
I say get up.
Last time we did evacuation, so we didn't do anything except just the island of the Bastion leaves with us. This time we're going to restore and see what happens.
It's finished. Now sit tight. It'll be over soon.
We still get the same song.
No matter what happens next, you're done good. I suppose all that's left is to try and remember this moment.
That'd be a crazy thing to be in, and like knowing that everything's gonna be
The
reset.
Bastion's gonna take us back to a better time before any of this.
Just that'd be a crazy feeling to know that.
My people forget everything you've done and each other. Though after all we've been through, I find that hard to believe. So long, kid. Maybe I'll see it in the next one. Caelondia, we're coming home.
Interesting. So that was the ending on that one. It wasn't much different. It was just different dialogue with a different picture. I thought they may have said whether it worked or not. Oh, okay, now we see Zulf getting married to that girl like he was supposed to. So maybe we're gonna get more pictures. I don't think we had pictures last time. Maybe everyone just gets their happy ending. Now Nozia is just playing her music. Oh, in front of people, so she got to be a musician like she wanted to. There's us working on the wall. Which I'm surprised. I thought they may show him with like his mom or something, like not staying at the wall as long. Because it seems like everyone got to follow through with everything else they wanted to. There's Rucks building what I assume is the Bastion. Alright, well that was it. I thought maybe they might give a little bit more story to like everyone going back in time, but it looks like they didn't. Not a bad thing. There wasn't much of a difference with the endings. I thought there was going to be a little bit more where they like explain like, oh, let's go back, and then they kind of show you what happens, not those little pictures. But this isn't going to be a common thing for videos. This story was just so weird and over my head that I had to make this video to understand for myself what the story even was in this game. So if you watched through this entire series, including this video, thank you very much. I will see you around in the next gameplay, whatever that will be. See you around then. Bye.